Before we get started, we just want to thank Old Republic Surety for sponsoring this episode of Let's Get Surety, as well as NASBP virtual seminars. For more information on Old Republic Surety, visit www.orsurety.com. Now on to our show.
You're listening to Let's Get Surety. Let me hear your bonding talk with Kat Shamapande.
Hey everyone, it's Kat Shamapande. Thanks so much for joining us for this episode of Let's Get Surety. I've got with me today my co-host, Mark McCallum. Hey, Mark.
Hey, Kat. Great to be back with you.
It's always good to have you on. I am excited. We've got two repeat guests with us today who've come back on for a follow-up from the last time we talked to them.
Important topic, very timely, and I know there are a lot of people who need this information.
That's true. We're going to be talking about changes in the Canadian import system, specifically CARM. Well, I'm going to attempt the acronym here. I believe it stands for Canadian Border Services Agency Assessment and Revenue Management. Is that correct?
Awesome.
I'm getting shaking heads, yes.
Yeah.
So I think I got it. But to talk about that with us today, we've got our guest, Sheila Thompson, president of Rosenberg and Parker of Canada Incorporated. Hey, Sheila, thanks for being on.
Good to be here today.
And I don't want to leave out, Sheila is also our newest NASBP third VP.
That's right. Newly minted.
That's right. So we also have with us Cristina Hagivreta, manager of commercial surety at Trisura Guarantee Insurance Company. Hey, Cristina, thanks for being on.
Hello, thank you for the invite to come back and talk about CARM and the changes since May 20th. Thank you so much.
Well, and I was looking at the last episode. We actually talked to you guys back, it was September 16th of 2024. So almost exactly a year ago. Now that we're here, it's August 21st. So we're going to be looking at what's happened since then, since CARM hadn't quite rolled out externally when we talked to you last. But before we dive into CARM, I just wanted to see if you could tell us a little bit about yourselves and about your organization. So Sheila, could you start and just tell us a little bit about yourself and Rosenberg and Parker?
So Rosenberg and Parker is one of the largest surety-only brokerages in the world. I opened the Canadian office in 2008. It's a family-owned business out of Philadelphia that is now 81 years old.
Wow, congratulations.
In the UK. And I am a surety professional for all of my career.
That's terrific. Cristina, how about you? Can you tell us about yourself and about Trisura?
Yes, so Trisura Guarantee started its existence in 2016. So a fairly young insurance company. We started in Canada. We are currently the third largest surety company in Canada. And just recently, we started operating in the USA as well. And for myself, I've been in the surety industry my entire life. I started working in contract surety, and most recently, last year, 2 years ago actually, I joined commercial surety full-time.
That's terrific. Well, I just mentioned we talked before back in September of 2024, and now here we are, it's August 2025. Back in September of last year, we were looking forward to that October 21st external launch of the CARM initiative. How did that rollout go? Can you guys give us some of your personal perspectives on how that rollout went? Because I know there was a lot of trepidation and concern about further delays at that point. Were those realized, or did it go more smoothly than expected?
Our friends at Canada Border Services Agency actually extended the deadline. Uh-huh. So instead of being October 2024, as we had expected when we recorded last year, it got extended to May of 2025. Cristina, do you want to add more to that?
Yes, I was thinking about the extension now that we're actually launched, and I think it was a very good idea to extend it to May, mainly because the Christmas shopping season was coming up in October.
Oh, yeah.
I think the implications for the border lineups and people getting their deliveries in time would have been not very good. So I think the decision was very good to extend it. And even as we extended it, even towards May 20th, 2025, There were still last-minute discussions if it should be extended further, but it wasn't. So at this point, we can.
Well, it's good to hear that, the government agency took their time and made sure, they considered the change in the amount of imports that would be coming around that time of year and took the time to make sure it rolled out more smoothly, it sounds like.
Yes, absolutely.
I had read that, I guess, the Canadian Border Service, the revenue that is generated from their services is the second highest revenue for Canada, something like $40 billion. So I can imagine as the Christmas season was approaching and not allowing those imports in, that would be of great concern. So do all importers have to register in that system now?
Yes, they do. The switch was that prior to the launch in May of this year, an importer could piggyback on their customs broker's bond in order to be able to have goods come into Canada and have goods released prior to payment of duty. So it's called an RPP bond, released prior to payment. The main change with the CARM initiative was to make each importer responsible for posting their own security. Okay. And I can't remember how many importers there are, Cristina, but it wasn't tens, it wasn't 20s, it was hundreds of thousands.
Right.
Yeah.
So based on the metrics from May 4th, the recently that I've seen, we have 175,000 businesses, unique businesses that are now registered.
Wow.
As we moved away from the custom brokers having the registration for all the importers. So it's a lot of businesses, and unfortunately, it's a lot of people that were not aware of the changes, especially people that do their business all day in United States. I'm sure there's a lot of viewers that were caught by surprise.
And I can say that there are still an awful lot of importers that are not yet registered with CARM for that RPP program. And there's still an awful lot of education that needs to be done with importers. And it's not only registering in the CARM portal. In order to register in the CARM portal, they need to get a Canadian business number. And they also need to get what's called a program number that indicates that they're coming in as an importer. And so they have to have that in hand before they get to the stage of registering in the CARM client portal and figuring out what they're going to do about their security.
So is the Canadian Border Service still going out there and trying to build that awareness? I mean, are you seeing outreach being done, particularly maybe to the infrequent importer who may be getting ready to get caught off guard as they're trying to bring their goods into Canada?
I think they're doing a good job to update their website with the latest information. We know that there's still delays at the border and packages are still being held back. And even we hear and we get phone calls from brokers explaining the issues. So we know there's delays. And the latest, what I've seen from Canada Border Services is that they're prioritizing perishable items.
Sheila, you had touched on, the importance of financial security, particularly the release prior to payment system. And you mentioned the bond. Is that the only financial security that is acceptable under that system?
They will actually have two different kinds of security that they will accept. One is cash.
Okay.
And if it's cash, it's 100% of the highest duties and taxes in the last 12 months. The other option is a bond, and that becomes 50% of the highest month of duties and taxes in the last 12 months. So, from the point of view of an importer, to have a bond doesn't hit their cash flow, whereas to post security hits cash flow in a big way, especially with the larger importers.
Yeah, 50 to 100%, so a big difference.
Big jump. Yeah.
And they're hitting all sizes of importers. So the minimum bond amount is $5,000. and Canadian dollars, of course. And the largest bond amount comes in at 10 million.
Okay.
So they have capped that exposure at 10 million.
Wow.
Is that much different from the exposure someone would have seen in the previous system, or is that fairly similar?
I think it's a large difference.
Okay.
Based on what we've done before, because before the importers didn't need to post their own financial assurance or bond or cash. Everybody was relying on the custom broker's bond. And this is where originally the change started, because the government determined that they were undersecured by having bonds only from the custom broker. So that's where the change originated, and now every importer is responsible for their own financial assurance, whether it is a bond or cash.
Yeah, well, big change.
Yeah.
Moving everybody just to a digital environment is a considerable change.
Yeah.
Do you see that the system itself now, CARM, is robust enough to handle all these individual businesses, or have there been hiccups along the way now?
Can I speak about?
I'll let you take that one, Cristina.
And then Sheila, you can add to my comments.
Okay.
So the day that it went live, it went live. There were no more forgiveness. It was May 20th. But May 20th.
So there was no grace period after it finally went live, because there was additional postponement. So that makes sense.
Exactly. We had 180 days from October until May, but May, it was everybody has to have the electronic paperwork ready.
Okay.
But I do feel bad for, again, our American viewers, because for us, we went live. So May 20th was Tuesday, and we were just coming off a long weekend, and all the businesses were closed. So for every American that just heard about it on May 19, Monday, and everybody, when May 20th went live, it was the busiest week that's in my industry.
Yeah.
It started with, unfortunately, the CARM system could not keep up with the demand, so it literally crashed.
Oh, okay.
And we weren't able to access it, and even within the team, some people could access it, others couldn't. So it was very difficult. And the biggest problem was that those bonds were sent electronically. So the Canada website system, the portal, had to be live to send the bonds, and you couldn't send the electronic bonds. So first week was disastrous, and first month was disastrous. It was very stressful, and my heart goes out to every importer that was trying to reach us, trying to talk to their broker, custom broker, us. It was busy.
And they literally have to see the existence of the financial security. If you have a 18-wheeler, a carrier there at the border. So if they can't access the system, that truck is staying right where it is, not crossing. Is that correct?
Exactly. And they wouldn't accept copies of the bonds, even if they had bonds posted.
And from a surety broker's perspective, we cannot see the CARM client portal.
Okay.
So we were dealing with importers who were calling us with questions about the CARM client portal, specific questions. And we would have to say, well, you'll have to send us a screenshot.
Yeah.
And then we would have to call the underwriters who actually had access to be able to see what was in the portal. And we've had a number of times with various clients where we've actually had to have three-way conversations with client, surety, and us as the surety broker to make sure that everything was aligned properly in the CARM client portal.
Interesting. So they can't, obviously it's a permission system, so they can't give you permission to even see their screen. They have to do a screen capture and send it to you. Wow.
That's correct. So it became pretty complex at times. And the way in which information flows from the surety company to the CARM system, there are two different ways. So it depends on which surety company we're talking to as to what their methodology is.
Great. Thanks, Sheila. That was really interesting to see how the different parties interface with the system and what you can see and not see. So, Cristina, what do you see? What improvements have transpired since that period when it had crashed? I'm sure that was of great concern. What has happened since?
So since, let's say June, the beginning of June, CBSA has worked extensively to improve the bandwidth on their system and to make sure that CARM is no longer crashing, which is the case now, as well as we had to do changes on our end, and I'm sure the other partners had to do the same, and it just had to do with the timeline and the time frame that we had to send the bonds electronically, because originally we only asked for 5 seconds to send the bonds, to send the electronic bonds from our portal to the government portal, and we have increased, and I think everybody had to do the same to allow for more time for the electronic transmission. The other issues that we see right now, or not that we see, but that we struggle with, are working with the importers to make sure that they give us the correct number. For example, their RM number, the numbers that they get from CBSA, the BN number, that's a 9-digit number. Those have to be correct. If that number is not correct, that's critical. It's more important than the company name. Because
so if a number is transposed, that'll just stop the process in the tracks? Is that what you're saying?
It doesn't go, exactly. And we're telling the issue comes that we're telling the broker and the client, we sent it, we've done our job. But we don't know that it's not done electronically. Since May, we had to do more improvements on our end to get an information that it was indeed sent. So we needed some validation, which we have done, and I think everybody in the industry figured that that's what needs to be done. And I should clarify that this electronic transmissal of the bond is done if you use API, but there's two ways for clients to get access, to present the bond to the government. You either do an API or the client does it's called EDI, and they log in on their end on the CARM client portal, and they upload the information by hand. Like they basically type their bond number, all their information from the bond, and it gets sent to CBSA, to the CARM portal, where we, as the insurance company, have to log in and update that information, approve it, basically. It's basically called guarantor approval on our end. So it's two ways of sending the bond once the client has decided that the bond is the right way to go.
And then does the system keep that record of the bond? And so at some point, though, right, the bond needs to be canceled. How does that work?
That's an excellent question, Mark. Because historically, the bonds were paper bonds. Right. CBSA has scanned most of the paper bonds. Well, they actually, to be fair, they scanned all of the paper bonds over the years. So I'm sure that was a great task for them, a big task. And then we switched to electronic bonds. So now when you log into their website, you actually see if it's a paper bond or it's an electronic. But you don't see the copy of the old bond. You just see a notification that this is paper bond or it's electronic bond. And for if it was a paper bond that was uploaded, that's also a bit more difficult on our side and on everybody's side, because you still have to follow the old way of canceling a bond. So you have to send a registered mail to CBSA to advise them that you want to get off the risk. But for electronic bonds, we just log into the CARM system and we can go and decline the bond or close the bond if it's no longer with the said surety, with any company, or we send an API to cancel the bond.
It sounds like CARM is really streamlining that.
Yes, it was a new process for all of us. Sorry, go ahead, Sheila.
I was going to say, if there's an increase or a decrease needed to the bond amount, from the point of view of an electronic bond, my understanding is that it's a pretty straightforward process for importer, for surety company to make that happen, if within the CARM client portal. But if it's a paper bond, the bond has to be canceled, and then an electronic bond needs to be created. So there's a timing issue. You've got to make sure that the importer isn't inconvenienced and sitting at the border with a canceled paper bond and an electronic bond that isn't yet quite in effect.
Yeah.
So it's a balancing act to make sure that we're covering for the importers that they're able to continue their business.
But it sounds like as you move forward and more of the bonds are electronic and the paper bonds are phased out, which it seems like that's the goal. Is that right?
Yes.
That the process will be so much more streamlined and efficient. Is that what you're experiencing?
That's the end goal. We're working towards that.
Yeah.
Because another item to discuss is the process is streamlined for RPP, for importer direct. But there's other D20 bonds that we can't have API on them. They're not as streamlined on the CARM portal, and it's not very clear where you find the other bonds and how they are submitted. So that's still a work in progress for everyone, ourselves, the importers, to get comfortable with the new system, with the new CARM system, mainly for the people that have access to it. Because, for example, Sheila is unable to access it, and in general, no insurance broker has access to the system. So it's privy to the insurance company and the client, the importer. So there's a lot of discussions coming from there when the importer is not clear on the system or can't find something on the CARM system. We're more comfortable with the CARM system because we have a lot of clients and we work with it on a daily basis. But I understand how an importer that maybe it's not that technologically savvy, just logging into a new system, and they can't find the information. And under stressful situations, they might not be able to just simply see it.
Right. In addition to underwriting, you're also acting as a IT help desk for clients in a way.
We ask for screenshots. My way of doing it is asking for screenshots and then highlighting the screenshots when the client has to go. So yes, we are doing IT support as well on top of the underwriting.
So those elements or other bonds that haven't really truly been made part of that digital system, is that CBS's goal in the future to be more expansive in CARM?
So for the other bonds, like bonded highway carrier, for example, or a duty-free bond, those are in the process of being streamlined on the portal as well. But for those bonds, they accept paper as well as electronic. And for electronic bonds, actually, the API is not set up, so we are not able to transmit electronically the bond from our portal to the client portal.
When Cristina mentions that they're not able to use the API, it means that Trisura isn't able to directly import other kinds of bonds other than these RPP bonds directly into the portal, which means then it's a manual input by the surety company or a manual input by the importer, and then the surety needs to go in and verify or provide that guarantor approval that Cristina mentioned earlier.
That's interesting. It sounds like it's a complicated process and that it's moving forward positively, and you're moving away from the issues that you'd run into right at the beginning, which is terrific. And that in the long run, it is working to streamline the process through the electronic function versus wet signatures and paper bonds.
Yeah. I think with any kind of undertaking where you're moving from a paper world to an electronic world, it doesn't matter what area you're looking at. There are always hiccups and always things that need to be adjusted and worked on to make it run more smoothly. Yeah. And I think, that's what's been going on, is that we've been working on the bugs, as we call them, to make things work better.
So Cristina, a year from now, if you had to predict people's comfort level and the usability of CARM, and I won't hold you to this, but what would you say?
I expect that it's going to be much better. I see the improvements that we've made as an industry from May 20th until now, and I can only say that it's going to get better.
That's great.
Excellent. Sheila, do you feel the same way?
I do. Yeah, I do feel the same way. And I think that importers are learning more about it. And so that word is getting out. They're more familiar with it. Everybody's got a better understanding of how the CARM client portal works. And from Canada Border Services Agency's point of view, they now have more security for those duties and taxes that need to be paid for goods that are being imported into Canada. So I think as a taxpayer, we're happier too that's
Right.
occurring as well. So yeah, I think it's been a learning curve for all of us. And I would think a year from now, we're going to be looking back and say, wow, this is a pretty cool system. We really like this now.
That's terrific. Well, thank you guys both for being on with us today. Maybe we'll get you back in a year to see how things are going.
You've been listening to Let's Get Surety, brought to you by the National Association of Surety Bond Producers. For more information about the NASBP and its members, visit nasbp.org.
Before we go, we just want to say thank you again to Old Republic Surety for their generous support in sponsoring this episode of Let's Get Surety. For more information on Old Republic Surety, visit www.orsurety.com.